Joining us now, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, who represents Louisiana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
So tonight is, of course, the first night of the Republican convention. You're going to be speaking there in just a little while. The theme tonight is Land of Promise. So what promises will you offer to the more than 55 million Americans who have now filed for unemployment since the pandemic began?
Well, obviously, you've seen President Trump working to get the economy back open again safely, to get schools reopened safely, so that we can recreate that great economy we had before COVID. Look, so many people were out. Actually, anybody who wanted to find a job was able to get a job. There were more openings than there were people looking for work pre-COVID. We've got to get through this pandemic, but as we do, you're going to see this president better positioned to rebuild that economy again. Joe Biden, in his 47 years in political office, never oversaw any kind of economy like what President Trump created in his first 3 years. So I think you're going to see a sharp contrast, president with a good vision for how we can get our economy back on track, building on the successes and the promises he delivered for those forgotten men and women that Washington had left behind for so long.
As you're well aware, more than 175,000 Americans have lost their lives and counting, and more than 5 million have tested positive for COVID-19. No other country is close when it comes to death. So could more deaths have been prevented? And what grade would you give the Trump administration for its handling of the pandemic?
Well, I just go by what Dr. Fauci said when he came and testified before our committee just about 2 weeks ago. He said literally President Trump on so many decisions, from banning flights to China and Europe to the steps he took to early off shut down parts of the economy. President Trump made the right decision, and those decisions saved American lives. By the way, Joe Biden disagreed with those decisions. When the president banned flights from China, for example, Joe Biden called that xenophobic. Dr. Fauci said President Trump's decision saved American lives. So, look, we've got to get through this pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic, but we're also on the brink of a vaccine for probably the fastest we've seen in the history of modern medicine, where you can literally 6 months after a virus started potentially have a vaccine. 2 different drugs in stage 3 testing. FDA is moving at warp speed because of the president's direction to say, get red tape out of the way, don't cut corners. But look, over 250,000 Americans have signed up to be tested. And you've seen promising drugs like remdesivir approved as well. That all happened under President Trump's leadership. And look, we know this disease is out there, the virus is out there, but we're going to get through it. And we also know protocols how to safely get back to doing the things we did. And we've got to open our economy because people are dying right now because they're shut in. Kids that aren't getting immunizations, people that aren't getting their cancer treatments. We're seeing a dramatic increase in non-COVID deaths in other parts of our society because of the shut-in. And you've got to balance all of that.
Congressman, I just want to follow up on that really quickly, because it has also been stated that if the president had reacted a week earlier, that would have saved tens of thousands of lives. If he had acted 2 weeks earlier, tens of thousands more. So are you concerned at all that he, for a lot, in large part in the beginning of the year, was really dismissing the coronavirus as a hoax?
Well, first of all, I never said hoax in relation to that. But if you look early off, China was lying to the whole world. I was in a meeting in the White House with Dr. Fauci and others when our scientists were trying to get into China to find out what was going on in Wuhan. Their scientists wanted us, by the way. It was the Chinese Communist Party that said, we're not letting you in. And by the way, they were lying and corrupting the World Health Organization, saying it's not transmitted from human to human, which was a lie. If China would have acted quicker and been honest with us and the world, there would be probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of worldwide deaths that would not have occurred. And that, by the way, China's got to be held accountable. We've seen Joe Biden's never been willing to hold China accountable on anything in his 47 years of service. You've seen Donald Trump being very aggressive at going after China. He's going after Russia. He's going after other countries. Look at Iran. You've got a deal with the United Arab Emirates right now and other Muslim countries that want to sign peace accords with Israel because of President Trump's leadership. He doesn't get credit for that, but that's the kind of work he does every day.
The RNC has announced it will not release a party platform this time around. The Democrats ratified an 80-page list of priorities last week. In the past, party platforms have helped voters decide and spell out what each party hopes to accomplish if it gets to govern. What are Republicans' main goals if President Trump wins re-election? And how does the party plan to pitch itself to voters this week?
Sure. The main goals are to keep Americans safe, to get through this COVID crisis, but also to rebuild the great economy we had prior to COVID. President Trump had built the hottest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, it was working for everybody. The lowest unemployment ever for African Americans, for Hispanics. Women-owned businesses were up like we've never seen before. We can get back to that. And who do you trust better to build it? The guy who had already built that great economy before, or Joe Biden, who's embraced a far-left agenda? Look, their platform, by the way, the Democrat platform mentions Donald Trump more times than it does jobs or racial equality. President Trump's agenda, by the way, is our platform, which is to focus on rebuilding our economy, creating more jobs, bringing jobs back from China, by the way, and keeping Americans safe, especially at home when you see some of these cities being torn up, where some of these folks on the left want to defund the police, which is a crazy idea.
We're out of time, but I do want to just lastly get to this point of the racial reckoning that's happening across the country. And, of course, that new incident in Wisconsin that's sparking renewed fury today. Video appears to show a black man shot in the back multiple times in broad daylight by a white police officer. Tonight, Jacob Blake is in serious condition, and his name is added to a long list. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain. The St. Louis couple who stood in their front yards with assault rifle as protesters walk by, they are going to be taking part in the RNC convention tonight. Are you worried about the optics of that?
Well, first of all, we all pray for those that are recovering. George Floyd's death was a tragedy that I think everybody universally recognized should have never happened. And by the way, let's hold those people accountable who let that department run into disarray in Minneapolis. They allowed bad cops to exist. You can't tolerate bad cops, and good cops don't want bad cops either, by the way. So reforming law enforcement is something that Donald Trump's laid out a plan to do. Joe Biden literally won't even address the violence in our streets right now because he literally said, quote, that he wants to reallocate money away from police. That's defunding police. That's not the answer.
Congressman Scalise, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the show.